Good evening, teachers. Good evening. It's a pleasure to have you all here for our first ETiP summer webinar. We are thrilled to see so many educators joining us today. And welcome again. Welcome to this webinar series called Innovative Strategies for Teaching English and Artificial Intelligence. And today we have an amazing session, dear teachers. The topic of this session is max test strategies for students and teachers. Now, I know that this session will be you practical tools to support your students to enhance your professional development. And now we are going to see more about our community. English teachers in Peru is growing stronger every day. We are now a community of 28,000 members on Facebook and 3,406, so sorry. I don't know how many numbers here. 34,600 followers on our Facebook page. And WhatsApp have more than 5,000 members, Telegram, YouTube, TikTok. So remember that you can subscribe here. Please join us, teachers, yeah? Now, please consider these instructions to participate in our webinars. They are so important. First, please type your question in the comment section. The answer to your questions and comments will be replied by our guest speaker at the end of the webinar in the question time section, okay? And about the exit ticket, yeah, this is so important, so consider that when finishing the webinar, before finishing the webinar, we will share a link to the exit ticket available for 15 minutes. In it, you will register your attendance, complete your details, including your email, and answer questions about the session. To receive the presentation materials, you must answer more than half of the questions correctly. So you have to pay attention to this session, yeah, teachers? Now we are going to continue, and it's time to know our guest speaker. And it's here with us, my dear friend, dear administrator, David Cuadros. Hello, dear David.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Miss Mariela. Well, I'm pleased to introduce our speakers today. He is Mr. Leonardo Mercado. And well, let me tell you a little about him. Mr. Leo Mercado is a language proficiency specialist with extensive experience as a certified assessor for institutions like Cambridge, Michigan, ACTFL, and the US Peace Corps. He has been recognized by the College Board as a CEFR expert. And has contributed to proficiency exam standards. As academic director at IPNA and Eurodiomas, he successfully led an international accreditation process with CEA and EA Quills. He has held leadership roles in TESOL International and was past president of ETiP Peru. Currently, he's the founder and executive director of NYC Learning Solutions, training teachers worldwide. Please, everyone, with you, Mr. Leonardo Mercado. Welcome, Mr. Leonardo.
Leo,
All
you
right,
can
here we
say
are.
yours.
Thank you for the nice introduction, and congratulations are in order for all the fine work that English teachers in Peru is doing. So congratulations. I'm happy to hear that you had so much success. Today we're going to be talking about the topic of max test strategies. We're going to look at strategies and how we can prepare our students for success on a range of different language proficiency examinations. And at the same time, we're going to be looking at some possibilities for teachers as well, because teachers also take international exams. So we'll look at both, focusing first on students. And namely, we're going to start off with an overview of the exams and the standards to which they are aligned. Then we're going to move to students and see what kinds of skills and competencies our students require and what we can do in the classroom to get them ready and to improve their ability to achieve success on said assessments. Then we're going to move to teachers. Teachers, again, also have a need for credentials. They're very helpful to have. So if somebody has an international proficiency certificate, that is something we can present to our respective authorities, institutions for recognition. And of course, that can be helpful towards the advancement of our professional careers. And finally, at the end, I'll have some final remarks for the conclusion. Okay, so let's get right to it. Got a lot to cover today. And so the first question I have for everybody is, how do we know if people have learned a second language? It's a very important question because it's something that we always try to ascertain or prove in many different ways. And I'm going to give you 4 options. I'd like you to choose 2. A, they can use the language in real life situations. B, they have a certificate from passing an exam. C, they get a lot of praise from people. And D, they have been studying for a long time. So I'd like you to take a minute or so and choose 2 of these 4 options. Which ones do you think best answer the question, how do we know if people have learned a second language? All right, let's take a look. Let's give it about 60 seconds. You guys are probably super, super duper smart, as everybody who attends these sessions from English teachers in Peru usually are. So we'll give you about 60 seconds. It's now 45. And then we'll take a look and we'll review and we'll take it from there. The answers will highlight the path we have to take today. All right, we're down to 30 seconds. Now, they all kind of look okay. They kind of look acceptable. But 2 are probably the strongest options to pick. We're down to 15 seconds. All right. 10 seconds. I'm not going to do I usually do when I give workshops to people who train with us, I usually do the countdown in French or German, Russian, Italian, but I'm going to skip that today. Okay, let's take a look. All righty. So probably we can go with the first two options. They can use the language in real life situations, and they have obtained a certificate from a reputable institution, a well-known institution worldwide, for having passed a particular proficiency examination. Those are probably the strongest two options. Now, getting praise from people, that's kind of subjective. I mean, if people say, wow, she speaks really good English or Italian or German or whatever it might be, if you hear that enough, you might be under the impression that you are a pretty good speaker, but it's a little more subjective and it's not always very reliable. And then we have, somebody who's been studying for a long time. Now, it is possible for somebody to be studying a very long time and not necessarily have a very strong command of the language. Time doesn't necessarily lead to learning, depending on the circumstances. Okay? So that's something to consider. All right. So let's look at the real world. The first point is if we have truly learned a language, we can apply it for real life situations in the real world. In fact, that's what we usually do in schools, right? That's the basic premise, the underlying principle of education. Everything we teach in the school system is supposed to directly or indirectly prepare our students for the day they eventually join the real world on their own, right? As they interact and engage in a variety of different situations. And whatever is not helpful is not as much of a priority. The same applies to language learning. So whatever we teach in the language classroom should help the person, whenever they're outside of a classroom, out of the comfort zone, or the safe space of a classroom, an instructional setting, and they're interacting with real people in the real world, they should be able to use that language that they've learned. Okay? All right, so let's take a look. Let's watch this video. It's my glasses. I took off my glasses, but the credit is up there. ESS for BC, so British Columbia. So this is a Canadian video. I'd like you to watch it, and again, we're going to analyze it very quickly. It's a very short video, and it kind of shows what we usually try to teach our students whenever we engage in the topic of, for example, buying groceries, right? So what do we need to teach them in order to do that? Let's watch this video very briefly. And hold on a second. I always with Zoom. Let's take a look here. I think we have let's share the computer audio. Share computer sound. There we go.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Can I help you?
Yes, please. I would like some cheese.
Cheese, certainly. How much cheese would you like?
I'd like half a kilogram.
Half a kilogram. Okay. Here you are. Half a kilogram of cheese.
Thank you. I would also like some rice.
Rice, sure. How much rice would you like?
I'd like about 5 kilograms.
5 kilograms of rice? I have 4.5 kilograms. Is that okay?
Okay,
Okay, here you are. 4.5 kilograms of rice.
thanks.
Anything else?
Yes, I'd like some oil.
Oil, certainly. How much oil would you like?
I'd like 3 liters.
3 liters. Okay. 3 liters of oil. Here you are.
Thanks.
Something else?
Yes, I'd like some milk.
Milk, sure. How much milk would you like?
I'd like 1 liter.
1 liter, all right. Here you are. 1 liter of milk.
Thanks.
And anything else today?
No, that's all. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right. So what's right about that video? This is what we usually try to teach our students. We try to simulate that. You'll find situations like that, purchasing or buying groceries, you'll find that in a typical textbook. We usually try to teach that at some point, usually at the A2 level, somewhere around mid or high A2. The thing about this video, it's a typical video we use for classroom instruction. The context is well established. The visuals are supportive, so we can, the context is established by the video. We can see where we are. We're in a grocery store. The visuals, we can see the items that the person is purchasing. The focus in terms of the language is very concise. We know I would like this. We're looking at quantifiers, 4.5 kilos, and so on. 3 liters of oil. It's easy to make out in terms of what the exchange is, or how the exchange is happening. And the speed of the language and how it's used is just about right for the level. It's not too fast, not too slow, and just about the right length. Remember, videos can't be too long. If we're going to work with a video, especially at lower levels, it can't be too long. So that's what's right about it. However, there's always a however, right? What's the problem? It's not a representation of real interaction. In other words, if you go to the real world and you go to Walmart, you go to a grocery store, you go to a deli in New York, you're not going to see that type of an interaction. In other words, it's not the real use of language, in the sense that when we're in a store, we don't usually interact with people. We look for the items we want to purchase. We find them on our own. In terms of the items themselves, the use of the language here in the video is generic, in other words, cheese, but specifically what kind. If you go to a supermarket in the US like Ingles, you're going to find Munster, you're going to find Pepper Jack, you're going to find cheddar, you're going to find Swiss, you're going to find baby Swiss, you're going to find American cheese, and so on. There are 50 different kinds of cheeses. In terms of oil, there's vegetable oil, avocado oil, corn flour oil, of course, olive oil, which research has shown is the healthiest type. And in terms of quantifiers, we don't refer to quantifiers. The only time we actually interact with somebody to ask for a particular item is if we go to the fish section or the deli section and we make a specific request for a type of fish or a certain amount of fish that's not already prepackaged. For example, you're going to find salmon in already prepackaged in a certain amount of weight. But if you want something bigger or smaller, you'll have to actually make a formal request, a specific request for it. That's the only time you're really going to use a more specific reference to a quantifier. So a grocery store is going to look like this. And basically, you could find everything on your own. You're not going to be asking somebody to give you a certain amount or a certain item, right? So what is it really like? So if you're going to pick things out on yourself, on your own, you're not going to focus, or you shouldn't really need to focus so much on the type of interaction we saw in the video. You're going to focus more on vocabulary, the types of items you actually need, and you're going to focus on reading comprehension to read the labels, right? Because in terms of when you go and make the purchase, you're going to go to the self-checkout. Now, every place has a self-checkout. I know they're doing that in Lima. I was just in Lima a month ago. I had to come over here because a relative had a stroke, so I'm helping him out. I had to come back to the U.S. But in Lima, I know that the self-checkouts being implemented on a limited scale. In the U.S., you have a lot of self-checkouts everywhere, so you don't really interact with somebody. And if you do go to a cashier, you usually don't refer to anything unless it's the wrong price that came up in the system, or if you have a question about the form of payment. You just basically stick your card in and you pay for it. You don't really have that type of interaction that you see in the video, okay? Or if you're walking around in the store, you might ask, hey, where can I find the milk? Where can I find Oreo cookies? Where can I find the Pepsi Zero Sugar? They're going to tell you, oh, you can go to aisle 16. So we're not really going to have the types of interactions that you're going to see. So that's why it's important to teach the kind of language we really need to find, or our students are really going to need one day. And we also need to learn that if we're going to be in the US, in the UK, in New Zealand, in Australia, in Canada, or any of these English-speaking countries, then we need to be able to use the language the way it's supposed to be used. That's why NYC Learning is now in the process of developing a new online course with the type of language that people really need if they're going to come to an English-speaking country. Anyway, the other way to determine if somebody has learned a language is if they have been able to obtain a certificate. And the only way to obtain a certificate is if you've successfully passed an English proficiency examination, which is not that easy. These proficiency examinations can be quite demanding depending on which one you're working with. And there are a whole range of exams that you're going to find out there. So once you get a certificate, it's a significant accomplishment. It's something to be proud of. All right. It's a credential that you can present to somebody, whether it's your school principal, if you're the teacher and they wanted you to get a certificate, you can present it to your school teacher or your district authorities. Or if your students have obtained a certificate because they need to, for whatever reason, they have something to be proud of. And it's also a sense of accomplishment. You've achieved something that not many people necessarily can, at least not most people in the world. And so that's something to be proud of. And it's a significant accomplishment, as I said before. Now, when it comes to exams, you have to take an exam to get a certificate. So I'd like to ask you, which of these statements do you agree with the most? Number one, exams are all generally the same. Number two, exams are harder if you're not familiar with them. Number three, exams require time and commitment to pass. I'll give you a minute. What do you think? Which one do you think is the one that you agree with the most? And I'm going to try to find some of the comments here. I'm going to go to the English Teachers in Peru website, Facebook page, and then see if this is on live so I can track the comments. And I can't read, so there we go. And let's take a look here if I can find it as you're coming up with your answers. There we go, YouTube channel, and I'm going to try to read the comments because there's a slight delay. Let's see if I can read the comments. Okay. Let's take a look here if I can find it. Okay. Coming up with your answers. Okay. YouTube channel, and I'm going to try to read the comments because there's a slight delay. Let's see if I can read the comments. Okay. So apparently there's no comment section. Oh, well. Yeah, there's no comment section. Okay. All right, let's take a look here. To some extent, they're all kind of accurate. They're all kind of correct. Let me see here. Yeah, so I've got it on the Facebook page. Let me lower the volume because I can hear an echo on my end. Okay. Very good. So in terms of similarity, they all share many characteristics and type of content. They're not identical because the questions can be quite different depending on which exams you're comparing. But they all generally cover the different skills. And they all, in one way or another, regardless of what they call grammar and vocabulary, they cover grammar and vocabulary as well. Okay. In terms of familiarity, the more you are familiar with the test that you're going to take, the better the chances you have of passing it. It is possible that you can know a language perfectly, and then you go in and you take an exam and you're not familiar with the format or the types of questions, and that actually can work against you to a significant extent. It might make you even fail the exam, even though you truly have a command of the language. The fact that you're not familiar with the exam and the questions and the format and the timing can actually work against you to a significant extent. And then dedication. If you're going to pass an international test, or if your students are going to pass an international test, it does require language development over a long period of time, over the medium and the long term. Language proficiency does not change significantly overnight. That just doesn't happen. And we have to make a distinction between language achievement and language proficiency. Achievement is what we normally try to measure or gauge in a course through a variety of assessments, whether they be multiple choice quizzes and tests or performance-based tasks and grades that we give in a course. That would be in the area of achievement, whereas proficiency is the overall command of the language at different levels as established by international standards. Those take longer to develop, okay? And it does, if you want to move from an elementary or a basic level, you want to get to a high level in the language, it takes a while. It does take quite a bit of time and, of course, dedication and effort. Now, what kinds of exams do we have out there? We have the General English Proficiency Examination, or the GEP. Okay. We have Cambridge English exams, a whole battery, but all of these generally have different types of exams for different levels and ages. So they have young learner exams, and they have exams for teenagers, and they have exams for adults. The Pearson Test of English, the PTE, the University Admission exams, you have the MTE, the ECC, the ECP, and so on. You have TOEFL, the TOEFL exam, the institutional TOEFL, the IBT, and you have the TOEFL Junior, which I used to work with when I was a director at IPNA. We implemented the TOEFL Junior with our young learners, and then the ELASH, which we also used at IPNA when I was a director, the ELASH exam, which is the English language assessment system for Hispanics. So this is a college board exam. In ELASH 1, ELASH 2, college board examinations for Spanish speakers. College Board has the main office in New York, and they have a regional office in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Okay, La Isla del Encanto. Okay, so I've had the pleasure of being there on many occasions. Okay, and of course there are different modalities. You have face-to-face exams, traditional paper-based, and you have computer-based exams, which are becoming more and more popular. There's also a mobile version of an exam out there that's relatively new, being put to the test in terms of how well they can gauge language proficiency. But you have a variety of options out there, and they're all tied to standards, and this is important. So standards identify what people know and should be able to do with the language at different stages of their development. Okay, so over time, as we're learning a language, as we're going from an elementary level to a pre-intermediate to an intermediate to a high intermediate to an advanced, using common language that everybody refers to, apart from independent and proficient and so on. The standards tell us, okay, well, if you get to this level, this is what you should know, and this is what you should be able to do when it comes to reading, when it comes to listening, when it comes to speaking and writing. These are the abilities and skills you're supposed to have, the competencies, and this is how you're supposed to be able to apply them in different situations. Now, the standards don't officially make a reference to grammar and vocabulary, but you need grammar and vocabulary to be able to perform different communicative functions. So, and of course, ideally, what you want to do when you're developing a curriculum, which is what we did both at IPNA and Euridiomas, we aligned the curriculum that we created. We aligned it with international standards. So every single learning objective, right, and was aligned with a particular competency or descriptor from the particular standards that they pertain to. So if there was young learners, it would be the WIDA standards. And then if it was the teenage or the adult program for teenagers and adults, it was the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages. So the thing about that is it helps us determine, okay, if somebody's going to be an independent learner at the B1 level, this is generally what they should be able to do. And if they can't do that, then we're not doing something right. Something's missing in our program, right? So like I said before, when I was a director at IPNA, we implemented, I proposed, and it was accepted by the board, first by the general director's office and the board, that we could do that students at every level would take international exams after a certain period of time. So we had thousands of students each year taking international exams. And fortunately, when I was director, they were doing really well. So most of our students after Basic 12 were at the B1 level. Actually, it was 100% at the B1 level. When they finished I-12, which was Intermediate 12, most of them were at the B2 level, and so on. And so we were able to see, okay, based on the statistics, if they were a little weaker in reading, then we improved and we strengthened the reading program. We created a reading program to attend to that. So if your students are passing these international examinations by a wide margin, that means that your program and your curriculum are very strong. If they're not, if most of them are not fortunately passing, then it might be an indication that you have to improve and strengthen the curriculum. And you can identify, based on the statistics, what particular skill area needs to be reinforced, or if it has to be the forms like the grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation, so on. All of that you can determine through exams. Okay. And so how long does it take to get from one level to another? Now, these are referential numbers from the University of Cambridge or from Cambridge Assessment, which is the exam division of Cambridge. They're referential. So this is just to give you an idea, depending on the different circumstances. If you want to reach a pre-intermediate A2 level, then you have to be in an instructional program for at least a minimum of 200 hours. If you want to reach a B1 level, right, intermediate, which is the common layman term, then you want to invest about 350 to 400 hours as a minimum, 350 or 400. And then if you want to reach a high intermediate, a B2 level, it's a minimum of approximately 500 to 600 hours. And finally, the advanced level, which most language programs in an EFL setting will not reach, would be a C1 level. It's a minimum of about 700 to 800 hours. Now, there will be a small number of students that can reach C1, but in most cases, they won't. B2 would be perhaps the maximum aspiration in most of these cases for language programs, for English as a foreign language, okay? Then when you're looking at exams, there are two terms that are very important. One of them is reliability and validity, and the other one's validity. Reliability means that if you can rely on the instrument, which is the exam, to give you results every certain time. So if Leo Mercado were to take a Spanish proficiency examination, which I did when I was in high school because I was curious as to what my level was, and I were to take it 10 times, the 10 times I would get the same result. That means that I can rely on the instrument to give me the same result. It's measuring correctly, whatever it is that it's measuring. However, in terms of validity, that is a different story. Validity, the fact that I passed an exam 10 times and I got the same result 10 times doesn't necessarily mean that I can speak Spanish or I am proficient in Spanish if the test is not well designed. Okay, if the questions aren't right, and so on. There's a number, creating an exam is tricky. It's a complex process. So validity is just as, if not more important than reliability. You need both to be able to trust the test, to say that the test is reputable and the test is something that you can confide in to give you the results that you need. So that if I present a certificate for a well-known, world-renowned examination that has established excellent reliability and excellent validity, my educational institution, if I'm a teacher, my job, if I'm an employee who took an exam, whoever it is, they're going to accept it because it has a very good reputation for both. Okay, so that's a very important thing to consider. And then there's the issue of security. Now, security is important because if I'm going to take a test, it has to be taken with following a particular protocol. I just can't take a test and then, people can cheat if the security protocol is not well established. So it has to be a test that not necessarily can be taken anywhere. Some mobile tests out there, they take pictures of you every certain time. So when you get your certificate, it's got like 8 pictures of you at the top of the certificate. Yeah. So, everybody's trying to address the issue of security because it's important, because that way you can make sure that whoever gets a certificate, if Leo Mercado gets a certificate for a C1 or a C2 level in Spanish or Italian or German, hopefully one day I'll get it in German, then that is actually Leo Mercado who got the certificate, not Joe Schmo, right? Okay, so that's important. And then, of course, something to remember, if you want to maximize your level of preparedness for an exam, you must be familiar with what is on it. You have to know what's on the exam. You have to know what the sections are, what the content is, how much time you have per section, what types of questions there are, how many answer alternatives, and what kind of approach they have in terms of how they ask you those questions. Okay, Cambridge assessment is usually pretty tricky. They're a little tricky, but they're tricks that you can figure out to kind of answer the listening comprehension question and so on. So needless to say, you must have the English knowledge and skills. And I'll tell you a story about a place in the universe somewhere. Let me see how I'm doing with time. I want to make sure I'm doing okay. There were a group of teachers that, it was a requirement for teachers to pass a certain proficiency examination. There was a very, very small, minute group of teachers that couldn't pass it. And it was a problem because it was a requirement for the teachers to have their certificates somewhere in the universe. I'm not going to say where. So I was aware of that. It was brought to my attention, and I helped the teachers in the areas that were causing the trouble, specifically reading and listening. And for a lot of people, reading and listening are the most difficult sections of an exam, of a proficiency examination. In this particular case, all of the teachers kept on failing the listening section. So you have to teach strategies on how to get around that. And fortunately, after working with me for a certain period of time, very quietly, they all passed. So again, there are ways to figure out. You might have excellent English, and all these teachers had excellent English, but they just didn't have the degree of familiarity and the degree of confidence to know how to approach the test formats and the timing and all of these issues that can work against you, as I said before. So it's very important to be familiar with an exam. And of course, if you're getting your students ready, they should be familiar with the exam as well. And what we're going to see today is how we can build up familiarity with these exams over time. So when the time comes for them to really take a real exam, those things won't work against them like they did work against these teachers. The formatting, the timing, and the types of questions, and so on. So let's look at strategies for students speaking. We're going to focus primarily on speaking. I might make a general reference here and there to other skills and other content, but I'm going to focus primarily today on speaking. Let's look at the general context. So if we're doing 2 hours a week and we're looking at 36 effective weeks in the school year, you're looking at, give or take, we're looking at approximately 72 hours of instruction per school year. If you look at the primary level or elementary school, which would be the term used in American English, 72 times 6 would be 432 hours. Okay, so at the end of the 432 hours, where should our students be? That's a very important question. Now, if we were to just double that amount to 4 hours, and I know that's more easily said than done, or more easily wished for than actually obtained, then we're looking at 144 hours per school year for a total of 864 hours at the elementary school level. But we're far from that, okay? We're not anywhere near that. Unfortunately, we have to get to a point at somewhere where people will recognize, hey, the hours that we're teaching is, they're not enough to accomplish great things if we want to really make significant advancements in language learning on a mass scale. In secondary school, we look at 2 hours per week. And again, this varies because some schools have 10 hours a week, private schools, right? And then they did the hybrid approach with the 2 hours and the 3 hours online, which is 5 hours and so on, which I'm not going to categorize it because I don't want anybody to, take it the wrong way, but let's just say the results were not as people would have liked, as good as people will have liked. Let's just say it that way. But if we're looking at 2 hours a week and 5 years, that's 360 hours. If we look at everything together, primary and secondary, 2 hours a week again, they're looking at 792 hours. So the question is, where should the students be after 792 hours of instruction? And what can we do in the classroom to get students ready? Now, we saw the number of hours that we need as a minimum if we want to reach an A2 level, we want to reach a B1 level, we want to reach a B2 level, and so on. So that's the number of hours. However, you need other things. You need a good, strong curriculum. Better if it's aligned with international standards. You need an excellent course book. Not the typical course book, but a strong, well-designed, modern, avant-garde course book that really takes into account and effectively assimilates international standards throughout its content. Strong materials, support materials, and resources. The teachers have to have the level of English proficiency, of course, and the level of methodological expertise or teaching expertise, or the actual term would be instructional expertise. A solid teaching and learning philosophy, not only at the personal level for each teacher, but also on an institutional level, and an effective methodology, technology, and of course, well-equipped facilities. All of these things have to be present if we're going to make it work in accordance with the hours that we talked about. Okay? So it's not enough just to be in a classroom for time. Now, here's another question. True or false? This is a true or false question, the first one. The Common European Framework of Reference for Languages can be used to see if my students are learning or not. Is that true or false? What do you think? I'll give you 30 seconds because I'm sure you guys, this is an easier question to answer. And let me check and see if I can look at the YouTube channel. And let me see if I can, while you guys are answering that question, let me try to find the, okay, there it is. It's live. Let's take a look here. Let's see the comments. Let me go to the YouTube channel here while you guys are thinking about your answer. YouTube. Okay. Yeah, I don't see comments. Okay, I don't see a comment section. I don't know. Maybe I'm looking in the wrong place. Anyway. Okay, so the CFR can be used to see if my students are learning or not. What do you think? True or false? The official answer would be true, because that's what we have been using in many institutions. We've been using the Common European Framework to check to see if our students are making progress in their language learning from one class to the other, from one course to the other, from one level to the other. Okay. And so we can see what our students should be able to do in terms of accuracy, in terms of fluency, how they interact with other students, the level of coherence when they're writing or they're speaking, what kind of vocabulary they have in terms of the range, the lexical range, and so on. These are the things we can check to see if they can do and if they possess it, okay, from one course to the next. All right. And so at the end of the 6th grade, if we look at the typical student, ideally, if everything has worked well, we've had the right number of hours and we've been successful in teaching them effectively, and we've been using the right course materials, and the curriculum is aligned with international standards, and we've been using technology again just as well, and the facilities are very comfortable and they make our students feel at home and happy and willing to learn and motivated, then basically this is what our students should be able to do when they have completed the 6th grade at the elementary level. And so every time we do an activity or a task in class, we need to check, compare it to specific learning objectives, okay? Learning outcomes, which is the term, which is more important than the learning objective, is the learning outcome. The learning outcome is the result of the teaching. The learning objective is what we plan to teach, and the learning outcome is what we need to see from our students to prove that they have learned, that they're making progress. Number 2, true or false? To prepare our students for international exams, we can include content that looks and feels like what they'll see on the test without making it the main focus of the curriculum. Now, I've asked this question during training in many sessions, and I get a lot of okay, so I'm being told, I'm being kindly informed that the chat is over here. I just can't see it for whatever reason. Let me go. Let me see, because I want to participate. I want to see the comments. I want to name you guys, because that's what I always do. I don't like it to be impersonal. I like to say, hey, you know what? Oh, thank you so much. I see Luz, and I see Aide, and I see Andy, and I see Rosa. Everybody saying true. Thank you so much, my friends at English Teachers in Peru. Vanessa, okay, and Norma, and okay. Everybody saying true. All right, fantastic. Okay, thank you. This is much better. All right, I love it. Okay, so it is true. It is true. And there are a couple of ways to do it. I talk about it in my publications, in my books. I call it specifically, I call it international exam familiarization. Okay, that's a term that I use. And basically what we're doing is we're adapting course book materials. That's one thing we can do. So for example, here we're looking at a dialogue from a book called World Link, first edition. This is the first edition book. This is it used to be a Hindley-Cengage book, okay? Hindley and Hindley then went to Hindley-Cengage, eventually became Cengage, and now it's National Geographic Learning. But this is the first edition. And this is meant for speaking, but we adapt it because we want our students to, develop their different competencies in accordance with the Common European Framework. Remember, the Common European Framework in Spanish is called the Marco Común de Referencia a la Lengua, no? Can understand and extract essential information from short recorded passages dealing with predictable everyday matters which are delivered slowly and clearly. Okay, so this is a speaking at a lower level. Okay, and we're adapting it so that we can develop this particular listening skill. And then again, our focus is on speaking, but this is just to give you an idea of how we can adapt it by creating questions that align with this particular descriptor, okay, at any time, so that we're constantly making sure that our students are learning things and practicing language that is consistent with international standards, because these are things that will be checked on an international exam, okay? These will be checked on an international exam. So the more, and this can be done very quickly. This is nothing that really takes too much time from you or your students. You can very succinctly, very inconspicuously assimilate these types of questions and tasks throughout your course without affecting the overall curriculum. If you have an official curriculum to follow, you can still introduce these questions and tasks very quickly without affecting, again, your ability to comply with what is expected from you in terms of what the educational institution wants you to do. In other words, you won't get in trouble. You won't get into trouble, okay? So this is something you can do very quickly. Now, in terms of speaking, we want our students to also interact in many ways that are similar to what the international tests are going to want them to do. And we're going to look at that now. Very, very important. So we're going to have them interact in many ways that are similar to what they're going to see on these tests, because by doing that, they will be better prepared. They won't be surprised, and they won't be anxious. They won't be nervous when the time comes to do very similar tasks on the actual examination at one particular point in time in the future, because we will have done it so many times in class that it's going to be second nature to them. They're going to be very familiar. They're going to be confident. They're going to say, "Oh, this is exactly what we did in our classroom so many times. This is not a big deal. I can do this." Okay, so this is something we really need to work with. Now let's look at this Flyers test. This is an A2. This is Cambridge English A2 Flyers speaking test. Jacopo, okay, I think he's Italian. Let's listen to them very carefully, and then I don't know if we're going to play the whole thing, but it's important that you can see. The reason I'm playing this is I want you to see if your students finish elementary school, more or less, if they were to take an international examination, what would they be asked to do? Okay, so let's do that. Let's watch Jacopo perform.
Hello, my name's Chris. What's your name?
My name is Jacopo.
What's your surname?
My surname is Candiago.
How old are you?
I'm 12 years old.
Good. Now, here are two pictures. My picture is nearly the same as yours, but some things are different. For example, in my picture there are 3 lights, but in your picture there are 4. Okay? I'm going to say something about my picture. You tell me how your picture is different. In my picture, the toy train is in the box.
In my picture, the train is near the box.
In my picture, the man is wearing a striped shirt. The stripes are blue and white.
In my picture, the man has the striped red and white.
Good. In my picture, the girl on the sofa is smaller than the boy.
In my picture, the boy is bigger than the girl.
Good. In my picture, the woman in the office is looking at a computer.
In my picture, the woman don't look at the computer.
In my picture, there's a man in a green jacket. He's carrying some drinks.
In my picture, the man with the green jacket is bringing some fruit.
In my picture, the clock is round.
In my picture, the clock is square.
Very good, Jacopo. George and Holly like animals. They both have new pets. I don't know anything about George's pet, but you do. So I'm going to ask you some questions. What animal does George have?
The animal who has George is a puppy.
Good. What's George's pet's name?
The name of George's pet is Socks.
When did George get his pet?
He get his pet last weekend.
Very good. Is it quiet or noisy?
Is noisy.
What color is it?
Is black.
Good. Now, you don't know anything about Holly's pet, so you ask me some questions.
What is the name of Holly's pet?
It's called Fred.
What animal is Fred?
It's a frog.
What color is Fred?
Green.
When she get it?
Yesterday.
He's quiet or noisy?
It's quiet. These pictures tell a story. It's called The Busy Umbrella. Just look at the pictures first. Helen is going to the supermarket with Mum. It's raining, but she has her pink umbrella. Now, you tell the story.
They find one woman and a boy who hasn't an umbrella. Then they give their umbrella.
Good.
And the other family wait for the bus. When the bus arrived, they find another family without the umbrella, and they give to them. And that family give it to Helena's family.
Very good, Jacob. Now, let's talk about your home. Do you live in a house or in an apartment?
In an apartment.
How many rooms are there in your apartment?
7.
Who lives in your apartment?
My mom, my dad, and me.
Well, where do you eat in your home?
In the dining room.
Good. Tell me about your kitchen.
My kitchen is white, and it has a small table, and that table is a mess.
Who cooks in your kitchen?
Sometimes my mom, sometimes my dad.
Okay, thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Okay, let me move this out of the way here. Alrighty. Okay. So a couple things, a couple comments that I was reading while you were watching the video from Karina Medina. Yeah, so if we effectively if we get our student familiar with these exams and we train them over time and we do break down, the affective filter is not an issue. So she mentioned the affective filter, the Krashen's talks about in one of his 5 hypotheses from that manuscript he wrote back in 1982, second language acquisition, second language learning, and he referred to affective filter. You're right, Karen. We break down the affective filter when it comes to taking an exam. And then Brenda Franco talks about how important it is to get our students to interact, because interaction for most of these examinations for young learners and for teenagers, if you work at the secondary level, is very, very important. And so we need to maximize their ability to interact in order to break down, in order to improve their ability to address these issues with confidence. And then Valeria Alaimo, she talks about how important it is. She says, yeah, I agree. It's important to look at the content from different angles, from different perspectives, and make sure that our students do that. And by doing so, they build up their confidence. So here we can see this exam, A2 level. It's for schools. Different things that the exam looks for. The exam wants the student or the test taker, or the actual term is examinee, to find differences in the pictures. So the assessor has pictures very similar to the test takers, but there are some differences and they have to discuss the differences. Then the next task is a very typical information gap activity, question and answer. I have this, what do you have there? Storytelling with picture prompts, and finally general question and answer on a personal level. So getting familiar with what the exams look for during speaking is something that helps us adapt the content for the course for our classrooms, so that we can again get our students familiar with these situations, so that when the time comes, whenever it is, that they have to take an international test, they'll be very familiar with these tasks, and they won't be surprised. And as Kevin said before, the affective filter will be at a minimum. Okay. So again, a lot of things we can create on our own or we can find on the internet. Here are 2 pictures with differences, and this is very similar to what a lot of exams look for. So here, for example, you'll see a bird in picture A, no bird in picture B, and so on. Here, information gap, okay? Student B has a different schedule than student A, and they have to ask and answer questions to find the differences. So, remember, information gap is the essence of communicative language teaching. I know things that you need to know that you will only find out if you ask me, and you know things that I need to know that I will only learn if I ask you. So that's how information gap works. Excuse me, something went down the wrong pipe. And then we have storytelling. And again, on international exams, you'll see picture prompts. Here are some picture prompts you can find on the internet very easily. Let's look at another kids test. It's called the TOEFL Junior. And we worked with the TOEFL Junior, as I said before, when I was at IPNA for many years. I don't know if they're still using it. I haven't stayed up to date on what they're doing. But the TOEFL Junior has a specific format. And it's interesting because one of them is a read aloud. So students have to read a passage quietly for a minute, and then they have to read it aloud, recording their voice on the microphone. It's a computer-based test. The second task, very similar to what we saw on Cambridge Assessment, they look at 6 pictures and then they have to tell a story. They have time to prepare. Okay. Cambridge Assessment, there's no time right there, as we could see in the video. Then in the third one, there's a non-academic listen speak. In other words, a student listens to the teacher or a group of students talking about something related to school, and then they have to take notes and they prepare for 45 seconds, and then for a minute they start talking and describing what they heard. And then the final task is listening to a lecture and then preparing for 45 seconds and then speaking for a minute. So they're clearly defined tasks. Okay. And here's a question that's usually controversial. Having students read aloud is a good way to assess pronunciation. Is that true or false? What do you think? This is true or false question number 3. Let's take a look. Okay, we're getting mixed answers. Most are true. A couple are false, but most of you are saying it's true, which is what I normally get. Okay, and here you go. It's actually false, generally. I'm not going to get into it too long when I do the formal training. Look at the video. This is why it's false. Most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time. Look at who's reading aloud and look what everybody else is doing. Okay? You see, she's reading aloud. This is what we normally do when we do that traditional approach to reading aloud. We call on one student to read a paragraph. We call another student to read the second paragraph. Call on the third student to read a third paragraph, and so on until we finish. And usually what happens is these readings that they're reading from in the textbook, they are, if you look at the level of the reading, it's usually I+1, which is something that Stephen Krashen called comprehensible input. In other words, those readings are meant to be read and understood, but not read aloud and not spoken, because there are going to be some words there that they will probably understand. There are going to be some words that they're not familiar with. They won't be able to pronounce them correctly. And what we end up doing is we end up correcting the student several times. And that actually builds up the affective filter that Karen Medina was talking about, because nobody wants to be corrected in front of everybody else. Second, the student hasn't heard a model in the more traditional approach. We don't model it first before we call on students to read it aloud. The student has a lot of hesitations and pauses because some of these words are unfamiliar, or they haven't read them before, they've never pronounced them before, even though they might know what they mean. And so it's not fluent. And then degree of participation, you have one student out of 30, right? That's usually less than 3% participating. 97% are not participating. Hopefully they're listening to the student that's reading, but then a lot of them may not be. They might be thinking about, what they're going to do on the weekend or the party last week or whatever it is. And then it demotivates if they're corrected constantly by the teacher. They get demotivated. Okay. And they won't want to participate again. I've seen this before. I don't have the time to tell a story where this was devastating, where the teacher almost ridiculed the student. This was at a private institute, and I went to observe the class, and the student, I'm pretty sure the student probably stopped studying English altogether. So we have to be very careful in how we choose it. Now, you can do reading aloud if we model and we do it together first. There's a technique called shadow reading, and I'm not going to go into it too much right now. But why am I referring to shadow reading? And more specifically, why am I referring to repeated reading? And I'm referring to repeated reading, and I'll show you how it works right now very quickly. Okay? So I'm going to time myself for 1 minute. And the way repeated reading works, this actually helps with speaking. So that's why I'm doing it. You're probably wondering, why is he talking about reading? It actually helps with speaking. let's do the repeated reading. I'm gonna read this aloud for 1 minute, and then I'm gonna stop. And once I stop, I'm gonna say 1, 2, 3, go, and then you're gonna read it for 1 minute. So I'm going to start where it says, sometimes when things go. If you look at the reading over here, it says every cloud has a silver lining. I'm going to start reading at sometimes when things go, and I'm going to put a little mark where I stop after the minute. Okay? So here we go. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Sometimes when things go wrong, they just go wrong. But occasionally something really positive comes out of a bad situation. Last month, while I was hiking in a state park, I took a photo of an amazing sunset over a lake. It was so beautiful that I decided to text it to my friend Charlie right then and there. Anyway, when I was taking more photos of the lake, I slipped and dropped my cell phone in the water. Disaster. I lost all my photos and I sprained my ankle. They couldn't fix my phone either. Well, apparently, Charlie secretly sent in my sunset photo to the local TV station. Today, they chose it for Photo of the Month. And I won a brand new camera. Maybe every cloud does have a clear lining. Okay, I gotta stop. That's 1 minute. Now you're gonna do the same thing. You're gonna start at sometimes, and I want you to read for 1 minute. Okay? 3, 2, 1, go. And when you finish reading, you're going to put a little mark on the word where you stopped. I stopped at lining. Stop. Okay. Now I'm going to do it one more time. Okay. But I'm going to read a little faster the second time. Go. Sometimes when things go wrong, they just go wrong. But occasionally something really positive comes out of a bad situation. Last month, while I was hiking in a state park, I took a photo of an amazing sunset over a lake. It was so beautiful that I decided to text it to my friend Charlie right then and there. Anyway, when I was taking more photos of the lake, I slipped and dropped my cell phone in the water. Disaster! I lost all my photos and I sprained my ankle. They couldn't fix my phone either. Well, apparently Charlie secretly sent my sunset photo to the local TV station. Today, they chose it for Photo of the Month, and I won a brand new camera. Maybe every cloud does have a silver lining after all. 10 years ago, my scooter broke down when I was riding to school. I couldn't afford to fix it. So that semester, I had to get up at 5 o'clock every morning to take the bus. One cold, wet morning, I was feeling really tired and grumpy. But stop. Okay, so I stopped at grumpy the second time. We do this 4 or 5 times, and the students try to read more quickly each time. And what this does is it builds up something called reading fluency. Now, why is this going to help with speaking? Because if you take an exam like the TOEFL Junior, all right, now here, for example, I wrote down the number of words. I almost got to 132 words at on the first occasion. I got down to grumpy on the second occasion over here. And so you want to get up, increase the number of words you read per turn. And you can use for kids a magazine like Time for Kids. This is on the internet. These are simpler passages, shorter, and current topics that they can read to learn things about how things are said. Now, the TOEFL Junior, what they're going to do is they're going to ask you to read a short passage aloud. You will have time to read the passage silently before you read the passage aloud and record it. So you read it quietly, and then when the time runs out to read it quietly, then you have to start reading it aloud. That's why a technique like repeated reading will give students a feel for what is a good speed for for reading. If they become fluent readers through techniques like shadow reading and repeated reading, then this is going to help them for the speaking section on a test like the TOEFL Junior, right? So we continue. Here's the reading, right? Now you will read a passage about clapping. First, read the passage silently. After the beep, you will have 1 minute to record your reading of the passage. And here we go. And these are the words that the passage will include: clapping, performance, audio, audience, and disapproval. And you see play. So it reads the instructions aloud. The students are wearing a headphone, right? And then here's the reading, and they have to read. And see here, preparation time, it goes down 45 to 1 to 0, and then it goes to 1 minute for recording. Okay. Now, what we're going to listen to is we're going to listen to an actual sample response 1. This is going to take less than a minute. And we're going to go over here. And I think I have it. Let me see here. Hold on a second. Let me go over here. I think I have it over here. There it is. So I'm going to play it. And this got a score of 3 out of 4. Okay, so you can see what this is aiming for, right? It wants the students to be able to read aloud. It wants to measure. Let me go back here. Hold on a second. Sorry. I gotta go back to my presentation. There we go. All right, let's take a look here. Okay, we're back. And so you can see what they're looking for, and these are the descriptors. And you can find this on the internet, the TOEFL Junior preparation material. You'll be able to see this, and it describes why the student got a score of 3 instead of 4. Okay. And then here's another activity here where we see the pictures. Now here, the students are supposed to tell a story, right? You will have 1 minute to prepare, and then you will have 1 minute to tell the story. And again, here's a 1 minute for preparation and a 1 minute for telling the story. And then they have to speak into the microphone to tell the story. And so as you can see, that's a common thread, right? Where the students, I'm not gonna go into the sample, but you can see it's a common thread, right? And that shouldn't be there. Hold on a second. Okay. That should, something happened. Hold on, guys. Hold on. Bear with me. Sometimes this thing does crazy things. Okay. So, you can see that, and here's another, this is from Funky Socks and Dragons. And you can find a lot of materials on the internet where students can practice storytelling with picture prompts. So as you can see, these are common themes, common threads on these international examinations. And so we can very easily introduce tasks like this into our daily classes to be able to get our students to become familiar with what is expected of them on these examinations for young learners. Okay? All right. Now, another technique is summarizing. And summarizing is important because summarizing means reading or listening to something, understanding it, and then summarizing what you heard or what you read and repeating it. Okay? And this is a good speaking technique in our classrooms that is not only good for promoting student talk time or student talking time in general, which is something we always want to increase, but it's also good for test preparation because it gets the student to process information very quickly and to summarize it. Okay, this helps with storytelling, and it helps with a variety of different tasks that we're going to see on these international examinations for young learners. Okay, so let's take a look. Let's look at an example of what summarizing looks like. The teaching steps: reading or watching a video or looking at pictures. We get the students into pairs. We time them, usually at 60 seconds. And then they find new partners. Okay. So, for example, Karen works with Rodrigo. Karen summarizes for 1 minute. Rodrigo summarizes for 1 minute. And then they go look for different partners. At the end of 5 or 6 interactions, I call on the different students to report on what the story was about, to see to what extent they understood and how. Because remember, every time they interact with somebody else, if I interact with Mariela is going to tell me things that maybe I didn't catch, and I'm going to incorporate some of those things in my own summary. Okay, so the students are interacting, they're communicating what they understood, but at the same time, they're also processing new information from each new partner that they're working with. And that's helpful. And we want them to get into that habit of working in a time-constrained situation so that they're accustomed to working under pressure and processing this information very quickly in a short period of time. That will help them on an international examination, whatever the age. If they're very young and it's a shorter test, then you can reduce it to 30 seconds, or you can reduce it to 45 seconds. If it's a longer test, you can increase it to 2 minutes. It depends. It varies, okay, depending on the level. Now let's watch an example of how that works very quickly with secondary students, okay? Here we go. And this is with teacher training video from one of our partners.
Good job, everybody. We practiced our reading. We learned about Judy's trip. But now, let's practice our speaking. Okay, I want you to work on your fluency. Let's read the postcard again. Let's take 2 minutes. Look at the postcard. Think about where she went. Where did Judy go? Who did she go with? What places did she visit? Okay, everybody, now please get up and find a partner. One of you is A. Who will be A? Decide. You're going to be A, Gabriel, over there. Who is A? Okay. Andres is A. He became the volunteer over there. Okay. Adrian is A. So that means Sebastian is B, Cassandra is B, and Julissa is B. Okay. Now, listen. A, you will tell B about Judy's trip. Now you have to talk until I say stop. Don't stop talking. Just continue until I say stop. Okay? Are you ready? Yes. On a count of 3. A, 1, 2, 3. Go.
Okay, Sebastian, so this is a story about a girl named Jody who went on a trip that she had a great weekend in New Orleans, and she also went on a boat to the Mississippi River. She went with her partner named Sam, who she thought was a little bit bored.
Okay, stop. B, get ready. 1, 2, 3, go.
So Jody went to New Orleans, and apparently she really likes jazz. So she went to a bunch of jazz clubs with her friend Sam.
Good job, everybody. Good job. Now I want you to find a new partner. Find another partner now, a different person.
Now remember, if we're going to get students familiar with the exam, now this we can do always with a reading or a listening, and it's a great way to promote student talking time. But we can also do it with pictures so that students can get into the habit of creating stories and processing that information very quickly. And then when the time comes, whenever that is, whenever it's time for them to take a new test or an international test, they'll be ready and they won't get scared. They won't get nervous, and they'll be confident. Okay? Now remember, learning is always the main focus. Do not teach to the test. Teaching to the test is a term that people hate here in the US, because in the US, there was a time when everybody was administering standardized examinations, and instead of teaching or having students learn in general, they were focusing on specific content all the time as it appeared on the test. So that you don't want to do. You want to assimilate the skills and competencies that you want the students to develop into your regular classes, into the regular curriculum, so it helps them learn whatever they're learning, but at the same time, it's indirectly preparing them for the international exam. Okay? So we don't want to teach the test. You can find plenty of test preparation material on the internet. There's a lot of it. Assimilate the content, don't replace, and then consider other factors. Do simulations every now and then. So you want to simulate a practice test, okay? Summarizing is a good strategy to report the story. Students speak freely. Miss Margot La Rosa, thank you very much for that comment. And then, can't read, I need my glasses. So, my goodness, I can't see, the text is too small. Yeah, well, I need my glasses. Okay, anyway, I'll be able to read it. Okay. Strategies for teachers now. Let's focus on teachers because teachers need exams, and we're going to be opening up a course very soon for teachers who want to take the a language proficiency examination in the short term within 2 months. Now, teachers usually have as goals a B1 or a B2 level. We've been working with teachers from many different educational institutions, private, public, private, and so on. And they usually take our GEP exams, Global English Proficiency Examinations. And that means that if you want to take a test, remember, proficiency takes time to develop. It in the medium and long term, you can go from one level to the other. It's not something you can go over, you can move to overnight. But if you have the language level, you can fine tune it, build up your familiarity with the test that you're going to take, and then do that in a short term process so that you know what to expect and then you apply what you already know. That you can do. And that's why we're offering a 2-month 2-month course very soon. Okay. All right. So prerequisites, you have to have the language level if you're going to take an exam. If you're going to take a B1 level exam, then you have to have a B1 level in general. Now, it might be a little rough. You might need to fine tune it a little bit. You need some guidance on the test, what you're going to see, the types of questions, the timing, what types of tasks for the speaking section, and so on. But you have to have the language level in general, and most people do when they want to take a test. We want to focus on the content if you're taking a preparation course, so we're focusing on the skills and the language that you need. And then you want to do short-term prep. You want to get familiar with the test, and you want to be aware of what you can do and what you need to work on, okay? All right. True or false? Teachers can improve their speaking for an exam in a very short period of time. This is our fourth and last question, true or false question. What do you think? Is it possible for teachers to improve their speaking for an international exam in a very short period of time? What do you think? Thank you, Brenda. Brenda Franco, so nice. Thank you for your feedback. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. All right. We got a false. We got a false. Okay, we're getting some good questions too. We got true, true, false, true, true. Okay, Yami says false. And then, ooh, everybody's saying, ooh, we got a mix here. We got all kinds of stuff here. Kimberly says true. Oh man, I need my glasses. When you have presbyopia, presbycia in Spanish, you got to pull it away to be able to see. Veronica Torres says true. And then Catherine Paucar says, let me see, Catherine, what'd you say? She's a false. Patricia Oshiro, true. And Kervin Mesa, absolutely false. Okay. Okay. All right, guys. Now listen, I didn't say proficiency. I said speaking. You can improve your speaking for an exam in a very short period of time. Because if you're not familiar with the exam, you're not familiar with the topics, you're not familiar with the timing, you're not familiar with the format, then you're not going to do very well. But if you do take a preparation course and you become familiar with the format, you become familiar with the timing, you know what they're going to ask you to do. You might not know the specific questions, but you know more or less they go from personal to general topics to discussion to description to explanations, then you probably will do better, okay, on an exam. So it is possible, true, okay, it is possible to improve in a very short period of time. Now let's listen to this test for 2 minutes, not too long, because I'm starting to run out of time. So we're going to listen to a B1 preliminary speaking test for adults. And we're going to listen to them and see how they respond, and then we're going to analyze the types of questions and the formats. Again, this is from Cambridge Assessment, and this is publicly available as well.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Can I have your mark sheets, please?
Here you are.
I'm Susan Watson, and this is Rada Roy Chowdhury. What's your name?
My name is Kenza.
Where do you come from?
I'm from Algeria.
Thank you. And what's your name?
My name is Mohammed
Where do you come from?
from Saudi Arabia.
Thank you. Mohammed, do you work or are you a student?
I work in a Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you. And Kenza, do you work or are you a student?
I was a student, but I had finished at the university.
What do you do?
Now I have my own salon beauty.
Thank you. Do you think that English will be useful for you in the future?
Yes, I think that English is the most useful language in all the world because it permits us to achieve our objectives and to go farther than we think.
Tell us about the people you live with.
I live with my family in my country, and we have neighbors, and some of them are cousin of us, of me. Yeah.
Kenza, how do you get to work every day?
I generally get to work by car.
What did you do yesterday evening, Mohammed?
I've been rather gathering with my friends, and we go into one Middle East restaurant here in Cambridge.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, I'd like each of you to talk on your own about something. I'm going to give each of you a photograph, and I'd like you to talk about it. Kenza, here's your photograph. It shows someone getting information about something. Mohammed, you just listen. Kenza, please tell us what you can see in the photograph.
I can see a lady which is maybe connecting on a laptop and reading on a book. He is normally in a library, or I don't think she is at home. Maybe she is preparing for an exam, for getting more information. Maybe she is revising. That's it.
Talk about the place.
I can see that she is in a library. There are a lot of books, and she is sitting alone. As I said before, she is maybe revising or preparing for an exam or presentation. Or
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna stop it there, and it continues. We're gonna go over what kind of tasks the exam provides, and I don't know. Oh, I know what I'm doing here. Sorry, guys. I keep on. I think I know what I'm doing as a mistake. Yeah. Do apologize for that. Yeah, Mr. Genius here, Leo the Genius. Okay, so there we go. So the language. So we see at the beginning, usually all the exams have an icebreaker, and they just ask you very general information, personal questions, information questions. What's your name? Where do you come from? Do you work or are you a student? What do you do? Do you think English will be useful for you in the future? Tell us about the people you live with. How do you get to work every day? What did you do yesterday evening? So these are the questions we heard at the beginning, right? That's the initial stage of the interaction so that they can get a little more comfortable in the conversational mode. And then task one, you show the one candidate or one test taker or the examinee, which is the actual term, a picture. The other one listens. One looks at the picture, analyzes it, and then you have to say what you see in the photograph. You use nouns, you have verbs, present simple, present continuous. You talk about the place, nouns, adjectives, and colors, and so on, right? So what's the challenge? Eventually they have to interact. Okay, they have to interact, and they have to look at the picture together and make a choice and discuss things. And in general terms, in terms of the questions and the tasks, they go from general questions to specific questions to more complex questions. and they have to negotiate, they have to give the pros and the cons, and they have to justify their opinions. There is a time constraint for each section. Cambridge English is very strict. Most of the exams are very strict on how much time you have to speak. And the assessor, there can be one assessor or there can be two assessors. Cambridge exams usually have two assessors, right? One, which is the one that leads the exam, the speaking test, and you have one in the back. They have different criteria that they use to judge. Okay. Now, some of these tests are computer based. So you speak into a microphone, the computer based test records your responses, and then those responses are evaluated in the UK or in New York. For example, in the case of the GEP, which is the exam that we offer, the Global English Proficiency Examination, the speaking component is answered or excuse me, assessed in London or in New York, one or the other. Okay. Okay. Cambridge exams. So here we see intro, the description. She sees the picture, describes and explains. The third task, which we did not see, is a discussion, again with pictures, and they have to give opinions, arrive at a decision. And the final task is a discussion. Again, they're all very similar, but this is the B1 level test. General questions: which sports do you like? Why do people like it? Do you agree? She turns to the other examinee. What do you agree? Do you have a favorite sports team? So the assessor keeps the conversation going on that topic, and each examinee has to say something back and forth in relation. So both of the examinees participate, and hopefully equally, and a lot will depend on how much they say. So that's generally the Cambridge exam. If you look at another exam like the Michigan English test, right? Here it's similar. For example, in part one, they might see a picture and there's a situation in the picture. They look at it for 60 seconds. They describe it. And then they talk about a personal experience related to the situation in the picture. That's another 60 seconds. And then they give a general opinion, a personal opinion about the topic in the picture, another 60 seconds. Part two, explain the advantages or disadvantages of a given situation for 90 seconds. And then you give an opinion and provide convincing arguments on a new topic. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to wrap it up real soon. Okay, so those are the segments, okay? Language, information questions, where, why, what. Narration, you have to be able to narrate. So you see, by analyzing these examinations, you get to see what kind of language is required. Past, present, present continuous, present perfect, future with going to, analyses, pros and cons, argumentation, opinions, justification, summarize. Eventually, once you have a map of the language that you need on these exams, depending on the level, then you know what you need to get your students to practice on. And if you're the one who's going to take a test as a teacher, then you know what you have to focus on. Now, here's a technique for fluency that can help you on an exam, especially if you're working with pictures. It's called the what, where, why technique. So anytime you have present a picture, you want the students to tell you, or you want to be able to say, what is happening? You know, what do I see? Where are they? Talk about the place. Why is this happening? So what do you see? Where is this? Why is this happening? Whenever you have a picture, get the students to practice that. If you're taking an exam, you do that. Get into the habit of doing that. That will help you with your fluency, and that will also help you with pictures on any international exam. The 4-3-2 technique, and we're about to finish. The 4-3-2 technique is something that also helps you with fluency. The teacher gives a general topic. The students think about the topic. Then you have students, half of the class is a speaker, the other half is a listener. You put them in pairs. The speaker speaks for 60 seconds, excuse me, for 4 minutes, then goes to the next listener, 3 minutes, goes to the next listener, goes for 2 minutes, and then they switch roles. The speaker becomes the listener, and they do that. That's for usually a higher level student. If you want the lower level students to do the same thing, they're going to need less time because they won't be able to speak in 4 minutes. They're going to run out of language to use. So you might want to make it 2 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds. You can adapt it. And this is very, very good for improving fluency, and it helps you also to think quickly when it comes to these exams. I don't have time to show you the technique. I was going to show you here. I'm getting some messages. I gotta get moving. I'm almost done. And then here, these are some tasks that we might want to see with the GEP. So the General English Proficiency Examination, these are some tasks that we use in our courses to prepare you. We're going to discuss the following topics in terms of how they can help people develop personally and professionally. Books and literature, the media, education. We have a discussion, or let's discuss the following questions. Think for 60 seconds before you answer. How does the media influence your life, and so on? Okay. And these are the types of questions you might very well encounter on one of these exams like the GEP. Speaking activity, we're going to watch a short video. You're going to summarize what you see. Again, a lot of these exams share many of the same characteristics. So we know once we map out what you need, we focus on that and we get you to practice that in order to be able to maximize your degree of preparation to improve as much as possible your ability to achieve success on the exam that you want to take. And then conclusion, in the classroom, we can get our students to take these tests, pass these tests. Again, the idea, the strategy is assimilate in, hey, those two are misbehaving. Hey, don't do that. Don't be passing pictures. You have to focus on your work. Anyway, we can get our students to lose that fear. Okay, Karen Medina again. I'm going to refer to Karen Medina. She said affective filter. Bring down, lower that affective filter, lower that fear, lower the lack of familiarity with these tests. And over time, they'll be familiar with the format. They'll be familiar with the types of questions. They'll be familiar with the sections. They'll be familiar with the tasks and activities. They'll be familiar with the language they need. They will have practiced so many times that they won't be afraid once they actually take the test. Okay? And they'll have a good chance of passing the exam. Okay? Final comments, conclusions. The key to passing any exam, whether you're a teacher or a student, is being familiar with what you're going to find on that exam. Okay? Content, language, format. It's pretty easy to map out once you take the time to analyze, and that's what we do for you. If you want to take a course with us, we map it out for you, and we know what you need to focus on. We fine tune, what you already have. In other words, if you want to take a preparation course for a B1 exam like the GEP or a B2 exam, again, GEP, then we can prepare you for that by fine-tuning, polishing what you already have in terms of language proficiency. You have the language, you just need to polish it. You just need to focus on increasing your awareness so that you can, again, lose that fear and not let the format, not let the timing, not let any of these factors affect you negatively in terms of your chances of passing the tests. You want to practice, you want to review, focus on what you need, what you have, so that you're ready to take these tests and pass them. And remember, tests, you could be a fantastic speaker. You might have maximum language proficiency. But if you lack familiarity with the test and you don't make a commitment to prepare yourself, you don't make the effort, you don't put in the effort, and you don't put in the time, nobody passes a test automatically. Okay, it doesn't matter how good you are. You have to make an effort. You have to do your part. You have to prepare. And if you do that, then you will have better chances of achieving success. You will have maximized your degree of preparation and maximized your possibilities of achieving success. Nobody can guarantee success, but if you are prepared, you're going to do better than somebody who isn't. So those are the final comments that I'd like to make. I'd like to thank you for your time today. It was a pleasure. I'd like to thank English Teachers in Peru for the kind invitation. As always, my pleasure to be here with you. It's an honor to work with teachers. It's the passion of my life to work in education and to work with teachers specifically. Also, as a teacher of students, I've worked for many years with students. So thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for making the time tonight. It's a Saturday night, so I do appreciate it that you came and to participate this evening and be a part of this. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, dear Leonardo, for this amazing presentation, for sharing such valuable strategies on exam preparation, assessment, and certifications. Your insights will surely help us improve our teaching and better support our students. Now it's time to answer some questions, dear Leo. we have some questions for you from the teachers. So the first question, dear Leo, is from Luz Adriana Jaramillo Villegas. Luz says, I have to prepare my students for the exam this year. What's the best way to do it? For them, it's very difficult to use the language.
Okay. So it depends on thank you, Luz, for your question. Yeah, so you have a mission this year to get your students ready. The school year is about to begin in another month, and so you want to get off to a great start. And so what you're going to have to do first is to, like we've been doing, determine for the exam what they're going to have to know, what skills are involved, how the exam is organized in terms of sections and time, and then build your work plan around that for the whole year. And so if they need to know a certain type of a certain amount of, or have they possess a certain number of skills for reading and listening and speaking and writing, what is it exactly that the test is going to ask them to do? What are they going to learn this year? And how can you assimilate them so that they complement each other and you can maximize your students' ability to achieve success on the exam? So if they're going to do reading on the exam, on that exam at the end of the year, if it's an international exam or whatever standardized exam they're going to take, what are those readings like? What are what is the content like? What kinds of questions are they going to be asked? How much time are they going to have? The same thing applies to listening. We just saw for speaking, because our main focus was on speaking today, what kinds of tasks and activities are they going to have to perform on that test at the end of the year? How can you integrate different types? First of all, adapt the course book material that you're going to work with throughout the year so that they can get that practice that we talked about, right? So you want to adapt it so that little by little they're doing these activities and tasks that they're eventually going to see on this exam throughout the school year on different occasions, maybe once a week. The frequency will depend on how much time you have, but you want to have first of all, study the exam they're going to take, know it well, and develop a work plan to see how you can address each of the issues, each of the areas, the content areas, listening, speaking, reading, writing, grammar, vocabulary, and what have you. And then what kinds of materials can you create, or how can you adapt the course book material that you already have so that they can start being exposed to what they eventually will see on that exam at the end of the year, so that over the course of the next 8 or 9 months, then by the time you get to the end of that period of time, they're going to be very familiar. They're going to be very confident. They're going to be very accustomed to the timing. They're going to be accustomed to the types of questions. They're going to be accustomed to the type of content, the types of listenings, and so on. And so it'll be kind of second nature. They won't see it as something totally alien and unknown. People fear the unknown, and children fear the unknown even more. But if you get them familiar with it, then they're gonna be much more confident. They're going to be just fine. So that would be my advice to you. I would look at that exam or learn as much about it as I could, and then I would develop a work plan to see throughout the year how I can periodically introduce elements that will help my students develop their skills in a way that can also simultaneously prepare them for these exams.
Thank you so much, dear Leo. So the last question, because you answered most of the questions during the session, yeah? But now we have a question from Evelyn Anaya Chirinos. Evelyn says, how many hours should the students have English classes in order to get ready for the international exams? For example, get exams in answer to get maybe A2 or B1.
Yeah. So, okay. So it's a good question. And we know referentially how many hours we need in an instructional setting. This is important because the numbers that we looked at during during the session today, I made a reference to referential hours or amount of hours needed to reach certain levels according to the Common European framework instructional hours, which means hours in the classroom, but at the same time, hours in the classroom that comply with certain prerequisites. So, for example, if the course book is a well-chosen course book, it's a solid course book, the teacher is well prepared, the methodology is effective, and so on, then if we're looking at an A2 level, theoretically, we're looking at 200 hours. Now, we saw how we calculated, right? 72 hours per school year, give or take. It could be less, it could be a little more, depending on eventually how many hours we have and the number of effective weeks. But if we look at it over a period of 6 years at the end of primary, can we get our students to an A2 level, right? It's more than 400 hours. But when you analyze it, there's something called massed instruction, and there's something called distributed instruction or distributed learning. So over a period of time or concentrated in a shorter period of time. And this is distributed over a longer period of time. And we have a small number of hours per week. So a lot will depend on how effective we can use that time, how effectively we make use of that time. We don't have a lot of it. 2 hours a week, honestly, is not that much. But again, a lot has to do with how well we plan out how we're going to make use of that time and how we can integrate these activities and tasks and content so that we can enhance our students' ability to pass these examinations. So that hopefully by the time over 6 years and over more than 400 hours, hopefully they will be in a good position to have a good chance of succeeding on a test like the Flyers, or an A2 or the CAT, right? And doing well on a test like that. Again, we have to be familiar with these exams, study them, map them out, and then we'll realize, hey, yeah, you know what I teach in class, I've been teaching first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade. A lot of these things that I see here, and we saw an example of a Flyers test, right? What the student was required to do. How much of what I do in class each year contributes to that final outcome, right? Jacopo, right? Jacopo was a student. He was the Italian student. And he did pretty well. He did pretty well with the different tasks. How much of what I do contributes to that outcome? Because that would be a Cambridge exam, right? Cambridge is a prestigious language testing institution known worldwide. It's in Peru, it's been brand recognition for Cambridge exams has been around for more than 40 years. I would venture to say 50 years. And so it's a well-known, well-respected examination. And so if my students can do that, or what I do in class contributes to my students' ability to do what Jacopo did, then I'm on a good track. And so when it comes to hours, we look at the total number of hours. Remember, each grade, each teacher, each year, if I have a student, I have Martin in first grade, and Mariela has Martin in second grade, and Luz has Martin in third grade, and so on. We're all contributing towards that path that hopefully will get Martin to a point that by the time he gets to the sixth grade, he'll be in a good position to pass a test, right? So we all have to be aware of this, and this is everybody working together, whereby conscientiously, it's like a collective conscience. We're all helping our students progressively go along that path to achieving a level of proficiency that will allow them to pass these tests. So we know what the theoretical number of hours are. We know how many hours we have with our students in school each year and over the course of each level, primary, secondary. The question is, will we actually get them there? And that really has a lot to do with how we work together as teachers, how the institution works with us, and how everybody comes together towards a common goal. And I think that's basically what I'd be able to say in regards with that question, which is a very good question.
Thank you so much, Leo. Now we are going to share the exit ticket, okay? The exit ticket link. We are more than 600 teachers, Leo.
Oh wow,
Yes, we are connected. Yes.
On a Saturday night. Yeah, great.
Now we are going to share, so sorry here. Please, this is the exit ticket. Remember that you have to register your attendance here. You have to provide your email and answer the questions about the session, okay? Lo explico en orden y bien despacito para que no quede dudas, por favor, teachers, porque es importante que completen la información correcta. Si colocan mal el correo electrónico, no va a poder llegarles los materiales y a veces eso pasa muchas veces. Entonces, a veces por el apuro se va un punto, se ve una letra, vocales, etcétera, y no les llegan los materiales que amablemente comparten los ponentes con nosotros de su sesión. Entonces, eso es importante. De igual manera, les cuento que el día de hoy tenemos una sorpresa. Queremos agradecerle de todo corazón a Leonardo Mercado, que el día de hoy va a regalarnos una beca completa para un curso súper importante de estándares internacionales. Lo vamos a ver en un minuto, así que solamente van a entrar al sorteo todos los maestros que llenen el exit ticket. Lo voy a compartir a continuación. Por favor, Mr. Ortega, si lo puede ahí fijar en el chat de YouTube, ¿sí? Fija el link. Es importante que las mayúsculas y minúsculas, todo esté igual, ¿ok? Muy importante. Si alguno no puede acceder desde el chat de YouTube porque no ve el mensaje fijado, ¿ok? Entonces, tómenle una foto ahí a la pantalla y tipéenlo en su navegador tal como está aquí, respetando mayúsculas y minúsculas para que puedan ingresar, porque solamente van a tener el día de hoy 10 minutitos para llenarlo, por favor. Vamos a tratar de apurarnos un poquito para que luego de esto vamos conversando con Leo sobre un poquito de la propuesta de formación que tiene NIS Learning, que es la institución que él dirige, y de qué trata también justamente este curso para el cual está regalando la beca. Tal como está aquí, teachers, https, dos puntos, slash, slash, doble slash, cutt.li, welcome. Recuerden que welcome tiene la W en mayúscula, todo lo demás en minúscula. Los números 2025, ¿ok? Y nuestras siglas, las siglas de English Teachers in Perú. ETiP, ETiP. La I es minúscula, ¿sí? Por favor, tengamos mucho cuidado con el llenado, ¿sí? Para que no haya ninguna incidencia. Por eso les estoy explicando torito en español para que no haya ni una sola duda, ¿sí? De lo importante que es que ustedes llenen, porque con esto es que vamos a tener su asistencia, con esto es que nos comunicamos con ustedes, les hacemos llegar la constancia al finalizar los webinars, la constancia de participación, etcétera, ¿sí? Entonces, teachers, por favor, mientras van llenando, querido Leonardo, una vez más regresamos para poder conversar. Vamos a conversar un poquito sobre la institución que Leonardo Mercado dirige, que es NIS Learning. Tiene una propuesta interesante de formación. Me gustaría primero, Leo, para que también sepan los teachers de qué trata justamente el TKT Wing, que es el curso el cual nos está dando, Leo, una beca completa para este curso de preparación. Coméntanos un poquito sobre ello, luego sobre la propuesta del examen internacional que tienen en tu institución y de igual manera, un poquito también sobre la propuesta que hay para los maestros que se preparan para nombramiento, ascenso en el magisterio peruano.
Okay, very good. I'm going to switch to Spanish. Okay, here's where I use my Spanish skills. Bueno, muchas gracias por la oportunidad, Mariela, y la oportunidad English Teachers in Peru. En cuanto al curso para el cual estamos ofreciendo una beca, se llama TKT WIN, the Teaching Knowledge Test. WIN es para el examen de Cambridge en lo que respecta a los conocimientos sobre la docencia para idiomas extranjeros, perdón, que es muy conocido y es un curso que cubre los tres módulos. Es un curso en línea, virtual, que cubre de manera extensa y completa todos los contenidos que se pueden esperar encontrar en el examen TKT de la Universidad de Cambridge. Es un examen, es un curso con el cual hemos tenido bastante éxito y digamos, innumerables profesores, docentes han tomado el curso y es el curso para el cual estamos ofreciendo la beca esta noche. Ese curso se enfoca particularmente en lo que es conocimientos y capacidad metodológica para la enseñanza en el aula. ¿no? Y también conocimientos del idioma inglés. Como sabemos, hay una parte del examen TKT que se enfoca en nuestros conocimientos de gramática, vocabulario y, por supuesto, pronunciación o la fonética, ¿no? Ese es por el lado del TKT. En cuanto al curso especial que estamos ofreciendo también ahora, es un curso que se enfoca, es NYC English Plus. Es para un examen internacional que ofrecemos que mencioné durante la charla, la presentación, que se llama Global English Proficiency Examination o GEP. Es un examen que cubre todos los niveles del marco común europeo, desde la 1 hasta el C1. También tiene una cantidad de exámenes para niños, ¿no? Y es un examen computarizado que se toma en casa, es decir, no es necesario que alguien se movilice o se traslade a un centro de exámenes o de evaluación, sino más bien uno lo puede tomar en el confort de su hogar, en diferentes horarios y diferentes fechas programadas, donde simplemente se tiene que conectar a su computadora. Hay una preevaluación de la computadora antes para asegurarnos de que todo esté bien en cuanto al protocolo de seguridad, pero es un examen que da esa facilidad de poder tomarlo en casa sin tener que movilizarse en el tráfico horrendo de Lima, a pesar de que amamos al Perú tanto, tanto, y hasta el tráfico nos encanta hasta cierto punto porque es algo netamente peruano, pero sí evita, digamos, la necesidad de trasladarse por una hora y media en el transporte para llegar a un centro de evaluación, porque lo podemos tomar desde la comodidad de la casa. Es un examen computarizado, muy seguro, acreditado en el Reino Unido, pero sin embargo es un inglés americano o estadounidense, perdón, con británico, una mezcla de los dos. Es un inglés internacional. Es un certificado internacional también que se emite en el Reino Unido y es una calidad muy alta sin el costo. Es un costo muy, muy razonable el curso en general y tiene fechas flexibles, cubre todas las habilidades y los resultados se dan entre 5 a 7 días hábiles, que es una ventaja que tiene este examen, ¿no? El curso que ofrecemos nosotros incluye una plataforma para el aprendizaje del inglés muy, muy completa que incluye videos, subtitulados o no subtitulados, videos de gramática, clases de gramática, digamos, una comunidad para interactuar, música, es decir, gramática, vocabulario, speaking, grabación de voz, todo una plataforma adicional con recursos adicionales para poder enfocarnos en aspectos de la pronunciación, en aspectos de qué es lo que necesitamos para afinar nuestro conocimiento del idioma inglés, para poder maximizar nuestro grado de preparación para estos exámenes. Soporte de tutores. Particularmente yo voy a participar directamente como tutor en cuanto a la preparación en las sesiones en vivo. Van a ser principalmente conmigo eh, por la experiencia que tengo. Y va a haber también un módulo en línea específicamente diseñado para poder prepararlo para el examen GEP, ¿no? Y como vuelvo a repetir, el examen se toma en línea y los resultados se ofrecen en 5 a 7 días hábiles. Así que es un curso novedoso que estamos ofreciendo. Sabemos que hay muchos docentes, muchos queridos docentes que necesitan un
Ya
credencial
ciérralo.
y bueno, ese es el curso que estamos ofreciendo oportunamente en este momento para aquellos que necesiten una certificación internacional.
Muchas gracias, Leo. Justamente decirles también que la beca solo se va a dar a los docentes que estén presentes en este momento, solo se va a dar, si es que sale en el sorteo, tiene que decir presente ahí en el chat del en vivo. Entonces, por favor, no se vayan desconectando, estén atentos. Ahora mismo ya estamos cerrando el exit ticket. Por favor, Mr. Ortega lo cierra. Con respecto a la propuesta, querido Leo, una cosa muy importante que quisiera acotar, más allá de que la propuesta está súper interesante porque me parece bastante completa, el hecho de que tenga plataforma para practicar el idioma, que estén incluidas las sesiones también, ¿no? En vivo, para poder practicar sobre todo el tema de speaking, que muchas veces para varios es una de las secciones más difíciles cuando uno está intentando, ¿no? Conseguir su certificación internacional. Esta es una de las fases que, bueno, a veces se nos complica un poco por nervios, etcétera, miles de cosas. Y bueno, lo más interesante que está incluido el costo del examen, ¿no? Porque hablando de exámenes internacionales existen muchos que el día de hoy has compartido, pero en realidad en el Perú al menos, no hay de parte del Ministerio de Educación, ¿no? Alguna, de repente alguna indicación que diga que el examen internacional de nivel de inglés tiene que ser de alguna institución específica. Se valida, y esto es importante que lo sepan todos, teachers, se valida el certificado de nivel internacional, su certificación de nivel internacional de cualquier institución, porque no hay ningún convenio entre Minedu y ninguna institución, ni Cambridge, ni Michigan, ninguna. Entonces, tanto el JEP como otros, como el APTIS, como el mismo, los de Cambridge o Michigan u otros, son válidos. Y esta es una muy buena oportunidad, creo yo, a mí me parece súper interesante. Muchísimas gracias, Leo, por haber compartido esta propuesta educativa con todos nosotros. En el caso del TKT Win es excelente, ¿no? Yo he llevado el curso en la plataforma de Leonardo, la plataforma de Caprica, súper completo, yo lo digo por experiencia, es muy, muy bueno, te ayuda muchísimo, sobre todo para quienes nos preparamos de repente para el tema de nombramiento, en mi caso para ascenso, etcétera. Tiene toda la didáctica, la metodología de todos los skills con casuísticas muy similar a lo que Minedu hace, ¿no? En sus exámenes, lo que evalúa en los exámenes que hace para docentes, ¿no? Y seguramente es algo similar también en otros países. Tenemos teachers de diferentes países conectados el día de hoy. Hemos llegado a más de 600 participantes que se han conectado, no solamente de Perú. Muchísimas gracias a todos ellos. Todos creo que conocemos que el TKT es una certificación internacional reconocida a nivel mundial para todos los docentes. Gracias también a ti, Leo, por darnos esta beca el día de hoy. Al orden de Mr. Ortega, que nos indique que ya está listo, seguramente está filtrando la data de quienes han llenado el exit ticket para que podamos empezar con el sorteo ahora mismo, ¿sí? Entonces, también conversar un poquito, Leo, me gustaría que compartas también la propuesta que hay con NISA y el TPAC, porque en el caso de nuestra comunidad English Teachers en Perú, hay varios maestros que sí han llevado parte de este programa, yo misma también para ascenso. Creo que es un excelente programa y me gustaría que des un poquito más de alcance sobre ese programa que lo tienes habilitado durante el año, ¿verdad?
Así es, nosotros hemos tenido la oportunidad, hemos tenido la suerte y el honor de trabajar con docentes durante todo el año, porque la demanda existe en todo el año, ¿no? Es un programa muy completo que prepara a los docentes para los exámenes de nombramiento y ascenso del Ministerio de Educación. Es un programa que incluye sesiones en vivo con quien habla. Tratamos todos los temas, digamos, que requiere, ¿no? El Ministerio de Educación para, en cuanto a conocimientos y grados de competencias y lo demás. Para el examen hemos tenido un récord muy exitoso, ¿no? Bastante bien con el hecho de que casi todo el mundo ha pasado, digamos, estamos muy contentos con ello, hemos tenido una retroalimentación muy positiva. Incluye el TKT WEN, el curso TKT WEN, a través de la alianza estratégica que tenemos con Caprica Education en los Estados Unidos. Es un curso en línea que cubre todo lo que acaba de describir Mariela, ¿no? De manera muy completa y a través de su experiencia personal. Incluye las sesiones en vivo, incluye una plataforma con recursos, conferencias con especialistas a nivel mundial, talleres, todo tipo de video de soporte metodológico, herramientas, es decir, es muy completo, una plataforma adicional de recursos, es como de una especie de biblioteca virtual al cual uno puede recurrir tanto videos como artículos sobre los temas que se tratan, digamos, en el curso. Digamos, tenemos una certificación de 175 horas que incluye una certificación internacional, una certificación de nosotros, de NYC Learning. Entonces, es un curso bastante completo y muy exitoso. Hemos tenido bastante éxito con ese programa a un precio muy, muy, muy módico, muy razonable, porque como siempre digo, y es importante, aparte de la pasión que tengo de trabajar con docentes, que es algo que me hace muy feliz, creo yo que, digamos, digamos, la consideración principal siempre debe ser hacer una contribución al avance del país, ¿no? Al avance de nuestros queridos docentes que se sacrifican y trabajan tanto día a día. Entonces, no es un tema de enfocarnos en lo que es un precio, no es un tema de enfocarnos en ganar dinero, es un tema de ofrecer algo de la más alta calidad que pueda ayudar a la mayor cantidad de personas posible según sus necesidades y a un precio razonable, lo más razonable posible, para que todos seamos felices con el resultado digamos, tengamos algo que pueda ayudar a los docentes a cumplir con sus metas profesionales y sus metas personales, ¿no? Entonces, es un programa con el cual hemos tenido muchísimo éxito, un programa que empezamos a ofrecer en el año por allá, el año 2020, 2021, y seguimos fuerte con la demanda y seguimos fuerte con el éxito, digamos, logrado con los profesores y gracias a nuestra alianza y nuestra colaboración con English Teachers en Perú, con Mariela, todo su equipo excelente. Es un programa bastante completo que creo que si ustedes tienen la necesidad, cualquiera que tenga la necesidad de prepararse para los exámenes de nombramiento y ascenso, van a encontrar una propuesta bastante sólida y algo que les va a ayudar lo más posible para maximizar sus posibilidades de éxito en dichos exámenes.
Es muy cierto, querido Leo, realmente muchos de los maestros que han llevado el programa y el TPAC para nombramiento y para ascenso, la gran mayoría ha logrado el objetivo, por no decir creo todos, al menos todos los que han estado comentándolo. Muchísimas gracias a ti y a la institución que diriges, a NHS Learning, porque siempre estás dándonos tanto precios al alcance de los maestros como beneficios y facilidades para poder llevar cursos de calidad realmente, ¿no? Y eso es muy importante porque a estas alturas en realidad hay diferentes instituciones, etcétera, que ofrecen diferentes servicios, pero nosotros como docentes de inglés siempre tenemos que ver la forma de que al capacitarnos sea de alguien que tal vez tenga una experiencia, trayectoria, por ejemplo, ¿no? Como la tuya, de un verdadero especialista del área de inglés con toda esa sapiencia, con todo ese conocimiento y ese expertise. Muchísimas gracias, Leo. Yo creo que la
Gracias.
alianza va a continuar. Están muchos preguntando cuánto es el precio, cómo es, etcétera. Vamos a compartirles dentro de la presentación de hoy también la difusión, se las vamos a enviar a los correos a todos los que han llenado el exit ticket, la difusión de las propuestas formativas de NIS Learning para que ustedes puedan inscribirse en la que deseen y si son miembros de la comunidad English Teachers in Perú, siempre van a tener un adicional, un descuento, una exclusiva para ustedes, teachers, ¿sí? Muchísimas gracias, Leo. Ahora sí creo que ya estamos listos. Puedes compartir, Mr. Ortega, ¿puede compartir por favor la pantalla ya para el sorteo? Teachers, no se desesperen, por favor, porque vamos a volver a compartir el formulario, pero lo vamos a activar solo por unos minutos en agradecimiento a quienes están conectados y siguen acompañándonos, porque el día de hoy, al ser el primer webinar, está tomando bastante tiempo porque tenemos el sorteo también. Gracias por seguirnos acompañando. Sé que algunos no han alcanzado a llenar el form, no se preocupen, vamos a volver a enviar. Vamos a volver a enviar el link, lo vamos a habilitar unos minutitos para que ustedes lo puedan llenar, ¿ya? Así que no se preocupen, por favor. En este momento, más bien, lo que vamos a hacer, porque no veo yo todavía bien en la pantalla, creo que ya se está observando. Sí, ya tenemos ahí, listo. Entonces vamos a empezar. Sí, ¿nos pueden mostrar cuál es la cantidad de data que hay de docentes Son 498, querido Leonardo, que han llenado el formulario. Hoy con razón los maestros, Leo, se están quejando en el chat porque han habido más de 600, no han llenado todos. Ahora los entiendo, teacher. No, no se preocupen, vamos a volverlo a habilitar. Tranquilidad, por favor. Los 498 más bien que están ahí, que han estado pilas súper atentos, están entrando para la beca. Después de esto volvemos a habilitar el link. Vamos entonces con el sorteo, querido David, si estás ahí con nosotros, igual ayúdanos. Leo, a tu voz, por favor.
A la 1, a la 2, a las 3. Go.
Miss, ¿va a ser la primera, la segunda, la tercera?
Yo creo que a la tercera. ¿Está bien, Leo? ¿Qué dices? Porque Leo es quien nos está dando la beca. Él
Tienes
decide.
toda la razón.
Primera, segunda, tercera, Leo.
La tercera oportunidad, digamos. A eso, a
Sí.
eso.
Es
Ah,
decir,
ya.
la primera y la segunda al agua y la tercera es quien gana.
Ok, ok,
Ok,
está bien.
bueno,
Ok.
lastimosamente se queda sin premio el maestro López Cristian. Gracias, lo sentimos mucho.
Oyeron, teacher varón, ellos que siempre reclaman que nunca salen. Lo lamentamos, querido Cristian. Nos hace recordar algo igual y te vamos a dar desde la comunidad. Un ETiP pack va a ir para ti. Por favor, nos escribes en el chat, Cristian, ¿sí? Vamos entonces, vamos a recordar tu nombre. Te vamos a escribir para regalarte un ETI Pack con recursos, ¿sí? Por haber estado igual aquí. Está por ahí, Cristian, porque sí. A ver, Cristian, ¿está por ahí? Si no está Cristian por ahí, bueno, se queda también sin ETI Pack. Cristian, ¿cuál era el apellido? Cristian López, creo que sí lo he visto. Ah, ahí está. Sí, ya lo vi.
Christian Lopez, present. Okay,
Ajá.
I see it.
Entonces,
Yeah.
te enviamos el ETI Pack como premio consuelo, querido Cristian. A tu voz, querido Leo, la segunda que va al agua.
Okay, back to English. On the count of three, three, two, one, go.
Oh.
Ok, la segunda persona que tampoco gana es otro varón. Es
Y hoy día,
Lisandro Rodrigo Watangari Vela.
maestro Rodrigo Guatangari Vela, si está por ahí, se va a llevar el ETIP Pack con recursos de la comunidad English Teachers in Perú. Aunque no haya ganado la beca, nosotros le vamos a dar el premio consuelo, porque el día de hoy se imponen los teachers varones. No sé qué pasó, pero todavía no va. Oye, esa voz tan triste. Ahora
All right.
vamos, sí, con el ganador o la
Here's
ganadora, querido Leo. ¿A quién le vas a dar la suerte?
here's the winner. Three, two, one, go.
Ok, tenemos ganadora, Rosa Hilda Guerrero Correa.
Maestra Rosita, es conocida de la comunidad. Espero que realmente esté. Profesor Lisandro Watangari, teacher, por favor, no ha respondido ahí en el chat. Si no responde en el chat, no le vamos a poder enviar el ETI Pack, ¿ya? Solo debe decir presente y ya está. Si no está por ahí, entonces no le vamos a poder enviar. A Teacher Cristian López sí, y la super ganadora, como nuestro querido David nos acaba de indicar, Rosa Hilda Guerrero, ¿está por ahí? ¿Ya la han leído? Leo, David, ¿ya está?
Rosa, let's see. Rosa.
Rosa Hilda Guerrero Correa acaba de decir, creo,
Yeah,
present, yes.
present. Yep. Rosa Ilaga,
Oh,
present. All
ya.
right.
Ya.
Congratulations, Rosa. All right.
Congratulations, tía Rosita. Uy, ya
Fantastic.
tenemos la ganadora, mi Rosita. Usted se va a llevar la beca completa del curso TKT, que lo va a llevar con Caprica gracias a la institución de Mr. Mercado NHS Learning. Bien, entonces
Beautiful.
continuamos ahora sí, el día de hoy. Vamos a compartir, teachers, por favor, no se desesperen, ¿ya? Tranquilitos, voy a compartir en este momento una vez más el exit ticket. Ok, sorry, está por acá, está por aquí, está por aquí. Si se observa mi pantalla, porque hoy día mi línea ha estado traicionándome un poco. Espero que sí. Ya está, estoy compartiendo en este momento el exit ticket una vez más. Mr. Ortega, por favor, abre el formulario para que los maestros que están conectados en este momento, quienes no han llegado a llenar, puedan llenar el form. Recuerden que deben respetar mayúscula y minúscula, ¿sí? A veces es por eso que no ingresa. Una vez más, aquí tienen el link. Está fijado también en el chat de YouTube, pero si desde ahí no les da, no pueden abrirlo, tómenle una fotito ahí a la pantalla, digiten en su navegador, escriban https://cutt.li/welcome, solo la W está en mayúscula, lo demás es minúscula, 2025 y nuestras siglas, ETiP, de English Teachers in Perú. La E, la T va en mayúscula, la I en minúscula, la P en mayúscula. Ya, teachers, por favor, ya lo estoy poniendo en pantalla. Lo dejamos un ratito más. Tómenle fotito quienes no lo han visto antes o no pueden ingresar por el link. Y a digitar, por favor, les vamos a dar 5 minutitos más, ya, 10 minutitos más nada más para que puedan completar, por favor. Recuerden responder bien las preguntas, ¿sí? Hemos estado atentos a la sesión de Mr. Mercado. Yo sé que sí. Y vamos a ver ahora, Leo, por favor, acompáñanos unos minutitos más
Claro,
para poder cerrar
claro.
el día de hoy. ¿Qué tenemos para la próxima semana? Next weekend. Y tenemos una sesión súper interesante titulada Getting the Most Out of Your Listening Materials. Vamos a hablar un poquito sobre listening skill y con quién. ¿Quién se va a presentar? Mr. Juan Gonzalo Iwasaki, representando una institución súper prestigiosa a nivel internacional como es International House. Él va a compartir el próximo sábado a las 6 de la tarde con nosotros y también van a haber sorpresitas, así que no olviden, por favor, conectarse y acompañarnos, ¿sí? Bien, teachers. Y llegó el momento de despedirnos a nombre de todo el equipo de administradores de nuestra comunidad English Teachers in Perú. Como ustedes ven en pantalla, somos varios quienes administramos esta comunidad que es súper grande. Gracias a Dios y a ustedes y a todo lo que hacemos con el apoyo de ustedes y de personas con nobleza en el corazón, que comparten como Mr. Leonardo Mercado con nosotros, es que es posible realizar este tipo de eventos, ¿no? Que llevamos a cabo con el esfuerzo de cada uno de los administradores, que como ustedes son docentes también de habla, docentes de inglés, que están en diferentes partes del país, Angelita Salazar, David Cuadros, que ha estado el día de hoy con nosotros, Sulamita Chudén, Dianita Chafló, Pamela Salazar, Caderin Novoa, Gina Soplopuco, Nefti Fortés, desde España, nuestra querida Nefti, muchos años con nosotros, Kurt Vilela, Miriam Córdoba, Maite Flores, nuestra querida Maite que ha estado súper atenta en YouTube, Mayra Ríos, Yuli Millones, nuestra querida Yulisita, Daisy Apolinario, Yulisa de la Cruz, súper atenta también en YouTube, en el chat, están muchos de nuestros administradores, cada uno está en diferentes lugares atentos a todo lo que hacen los teachers para apoyarlos. Miss Lili Espinosa, Jessica Carguavilca, Miss Consuelito Cáceda, Ricardo Núñez y Mr. Ortega, que siempre está ahí detrás de la pantalla, dirigiendo todo el programa que tenemos para ustedes. El día de hoy estamos realmente felices y agradecidos. Thank you all for joining us today. It has been a pleasure sharing this learning experience with such a passionate community of teachers. We hope today's session has given you valuable tools to enhance your teaching and support your students. Once again, dear Leonardo, a big thank you to our speaker, Leonardo Mercado. Claps for Leonardo.
Thank you. Thank you.
Amazing presentation, and of course to all of you for your participation and engagement, dear teachers. No olviden, por favor, los esperamos la próxima semana. Con ustedes hemos estado el día de hoy, Mariela Contorena, administradora y fundadora de la comunidad English Teachers in Perú. David Alexander Cuadros Campos, nuestro querido administrador. David, administrador además del grupo 5 en WhatsApp, en nuestra comunidad. Tenemos una comunidad súper grande también en WhatsApp. Leonardo Mercado, muchísimas gracias. Tal vez tienes algunas palabras para despedirte, querido Leo, de todos los teachers.
Bueno, dos cositas rápidas. Una, Rosa Vázquez mencionó, leí el comentario, me recordó porque yo estuve en su graduación en el IPNA y me agradeció, nunca olvidará las palabras que di y que también influyó en sus compañeros que se graduaron y se convirtieron en maestros. Eso es algo muy bonito de la educación que hacemos nosotros, ¿no? Que nos recuerden y que estamos en esto todos juntos, ¿no? Algo muy bonito. Y también los felicito por la iniciativa, por lo excelente de tus expositores. El expositor la próxima semana lo conozco, Juan Gonzalo Iwasaki, trabajó conmigo en el IMA y también trabajó conmigo en Euroidiomas, así que yo estoy seguro que va a seguir una excelente charla la próxima semana, un excelente taller y felicitaciones a ustedes por todo lo que están haciendo y gracias por el honor y el privilegio de poder acompañarlos y colaborar. Con la modestia del caso, en este gran esfuerzo que están haciendo para ayudar a tantos queridos profesores o docentes en el Perú. Gracias. Y en otros países también, porque también son de otros países. Gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, querido Leo. Qué bonito lo que nos cuentas. Creo que eso es lo que realmente nos da señales de que es nuestra vocación. Ese tipo de experiencias, esos agradecimientos, ese cariño genuino hace que digamos, sí, pues realmente estoy aportando en la educación de mi país, estoy marcando huellas en las personas y dejando lo mejor de mí. Qué bueno, Leonardo. Yo también estoy súper agradecida contigo porque siempre estás colaborando con nuestra comunidad, por las alianzas que tienes con nosotros a través de tu institución. Gracias a todos los demás teachers y a Mr. Ortega, José Ortega, que siempre está ahí también detrás de las pantallas. Muchas gracias. Nos despedimos y nos vemos la próxima semana. See you, teachers.
Bye,
Bye,
bye.
bye.